The constant back and forth that Stephen A. Smith is doing toward LeBron James is causing a lot of fallouts. And NBA veteran Richard Jefferson has now spoke, and he has completely destroyed Kendrick Perkins' logic about LeBron James on who he chose to give his interview to. But we'll talk about all this here next on the Simply Ball Dropping Podcast. Well, guys, man, it's well documented that Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James are going back and forth, but more so on the Stephen A. Smith side. Now, how did we get here? It all started because Stephen A. Smith has made some comments about Bronny James, LeBron James' son, and LeBron James approached Stephen A. Smith courtside at the Lakers and Knicks game. And Stephen A. Smith was seen on camera talking with LeBron James when LeBron James confronted him. Now, Stephen A. Smith, next day on First Take, he said he wasn't going to address it, but then he comes out and said that his bosses said, oh, no, you going to let this go? You're not going to address it? So Stephen A. Smith addressed the situation because he said he wasn't going to talk about it. Then he went on Gilbert Arenas' podcast and was talking all this nonsense. Also, he went on All the Smoke and was talking all this nonsense. But he didn't give that same energy when he was on First Take, even when he was on his own platform, the Stephen A. Smith Show. Now, in 22 years, LeBron James has never mentioned Stephen A. Smith. In 22 years, he's never mentioned Skip Bayless's name. So it comes to a point where when things start get personal, because like LeBron said, his job is to protect his family, and Bronny James is his son. Now, when you criticize Bronny James and critique Bronny James, it's basketball related. LeBron James said he has no problem with that. Also, he said you get personal because now you're questioning my fatherhood. And LeBron James took exception to that, and he stepped to Stephen A. Smith. So what LeBron James did, he did a calculated move and going on the Pat McAfee show. We all know LeBron is calculated. But a lot of people are missing everything else that's surrounding around this storyline. Kendrick Perkins made it a point on ESPN First Take to come out and question why LeBron chose Pat McAfee. So Kendrick Perkins used a race card. He basically said, you could have gave the interview to All the Smoke. You could have gave it to your boy Shannon Sharp. You could have gave it to DJ Academics. You could have gave it to Drink Champs. You could have gave it to Bubba Dub. You could have gave it to all these other black podcasters because he referenced Mind the Game with JJ. Now JJ is not doing it. LeBron chose Steve Nash. So Kendrick Perkins got involved and made it a race thing. Pat McAfee is a white male. But we know LeBron is calculated. Why not give that to Pat McAfee, knowing that him and Stephen A. Smith, that is something that is like equal to Stephen A. Smith. A lot of people say Pat McAfee is the better draw. So why not stick a fork in Stephen A. by giving that interview and answering questions on the Pat McAfee show? LeBron is calculated on everything he does. Once you think you got the upper hand, LeBron played a chess move and he went on the Pat McAfee show. But Kendrick Perkins tried to get involved and make it a race thing. What did that have to do with the beef between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James? Even what Stephen A. Smith is doing. He's going down all these accolades, turning it back into a GOAT debate. And what people are missing is the other stuff that's involved. So now we got NBA veteran and ESPN analyst Richard Jefferson blatantly exposed Kendrick Perkins for his race baiting on this situation and how he got himself involved. And Richard Jefferson, he unleashed the gauntlet on Kendrick Perkins. And that's just like Channing Frye said about Stephen A. Smith. Fact checks. Just don't come up here and lie about a situation surrounded around LeBron James. Do your research first before you speak. Just don't go on national television and start lying. So you know what Stephen A. Smith did? He had to walk back his statement when he was talking about LeBron James when he brought up Kobe Bryant, which I thought was diabolical. Why would you even bring Kobe into this? Then he talked about D. Wade, him not being in his Hall of Fame speech, knowing that at that same time, Bronny James had a heart attack and LeBron James was at the Mayo Clinic, and that was the reason why he couldn't be at D. Wade's Hall of Fame speech. So when you got people that know LeBron James and know what's going on, and see, this is what Perkins failed to realize. You got to do your research before you talking about all the brothers that he could have went and gave this interview to. Why not uplift their podcast? Why not make their podcast explode? He also said, you saw what Cat Williams did for Shannon Sharp, made his podcast blow. But what Kendrick Perkins failed to realize, that Richard Jefferson knows everything about the situation when it comes to podcast elevation. So before we get off into what Richard Jefferson said and completely shut Kendrick Perkins down, right now, I'm on my way to 15,000. With the support of you guys, I can get there. So if you're just now coming across this channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn your post notifications on so you know every time Simply Ball drops another hot banger. And I appreciate you guys' support. Now let's get off into what Richard Jefferson said, how he just completely shut Kendrick Perkins down when he said this. Let's take a listen.
Let me say this about who LeBron chose to sit next to. Bron has been on this podcast multiple times, 5 times. He sat with us after they won the 2020 championship, right? He sat with us and did an in-studio interview. Go check it out. Millions of views. Great time. He sat with us.
Tens of millions.
He started a podcast company that Draymond signed to. And I think this is the part. I hear you that people want his interview and that there's whoever gets it is a winner of the LeBron James sweepstakes. But we don't, in my opinion, we don't get to pick and choose. It's like, well, you could have gone here. And I know that what the undertone is of, oh, well, why would you lift up that platform and this person supported you? Yes, but he's also supported people along this line, including this podcast, multiple times. We helped launch The First Dance. We were on this podcast, and Bron said, man, if ESPN, they got to release that thing early. They used it in the promo for The Last Dance. They used this podcast audio clip. I say that to say is that he has supported and been there. So when we start picking and choosing, like they was talking about on the Gilbert Arenas podcast, when you start picking and choosing who he has to give his platform to at what time and what platform, yes, we're all going to want to win that. But if he chooses for a reason, then let's look at the history still. He has helped lift up a ton of other podcasts. He has done other things. Like, that's just true. I was there when him and JJ were talking about Mind the Game and how that got created. JJ's idea, bringing it to him. Like, we're going to fault JJ for that? So I look at this whole situation about who he gave that interview to as people just, again, picking and choosing. Because if you look at the history, he launched this podcast, was on it multiple times. He launched the podcast company that Draymond Green was signed to and JJ Redick was signed to at one time. So we can't sit here and say, well, I think he should have given it to this person to lift up. He's been lifting up platforms. That's my rant.
Man, now you guys, you heard exactly what Richard Jefferson said. Richard Jefferson put that notion to bed about LeBron James not going on these people's podcasts. LeBron James has started the podcast community with certain people. You heard what Richard Jefferson said. He has uplifted these podcast people. LeBron James is the backing behind the Road Tripping podcast that Richard Jefferson, Allie Clifton, and Channing Frye are on. And Kendrick Perkins comes on there. Now, we all know that back in the days, it was LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kendrick Perkins, and Channing Frye and Kevin Love. After every Cleveland Cavaliers game, they was on their plane and they was bringing you road tripping via the air when they was flying in and out of these cities to these games. So for Kendrick Perkins to go on First Take and really make himself look bad, and for Richard Jefferson to shut him down the way he did, that speaks volumes. Because, guys, everybody's focused on what's going on with Stephen A. Smith and everything he's saying towards LeBron, but it's a big fallout in this because a lot of people are getting exposed, and Kendrick Perkins made himself look bad, and Richard Jefferson just basically shut him down. That's just like all the lies that Stephen A. Smith is saying. He's saying that LeBron is lying, and then Channing Frye comes out and fact checks him and exposes him for his lies. So you guys, y'all got to look what's going on in the mass scheme of things. There's other things that we can focus on besides the fact that Stephen A. is going back and forth with LeBron. LeBron addressed it one time and he's moved on. Stephen A. Smith is the one that's keeping it going. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. I think it's good for TV. A lot of people think it's staged. But with everything that's going on, look at all the other storylines. Just like I stated, Channing Frye shut Stephen A. Smith down and exposed him for a liar. Now Channing Frye made Kendrick Perkins look real bad. And I don't think Channing Frye did it intentionally. He just put the facts out there. See, that's what I'm saying, guys. You got to be careful what storylines and narrative that you pay attention to. But when we have the facts here on Simply Ball Drop and we present it to you, just take heed. I see everybody in the comments section, #salute. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn your post notifications on so you know every time Simply Ball Drop and drops a hot banger. And we're going to catch you on the next one. Deuces. Oh, and I forgot. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Might not be for you, but it might be for them.
Thanks for listening to the Simply Ball Droppin' podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share on all major platforms.
That's all, folks.